It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Wednesday, April 5th, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this wonderful and awesome and amazing Wednesday? We've got current news from around the world, the word study on the book of Joshua, and of course, health is happiness with Dr. Giovanni from Australia. All right, everyone, how are you doing? It is Wednesday. Super thankful for all of you joining us here on the Morning Star Drive. Wednesday service tonight, and I and really hope all of you are looking forward to receiving grace and fire. And don't forget to pray for and encourage your leaders that are preaching. It's not an easy thing to do each and every week. I just want to remind everyone to keep liking and commenting. Yes, I do see the likes going up more and more, and that's just a sign of communication between you and me. Sometimes people don't like to comment, but you guys can always click the like button if you like the show or not too. Of course, questions, requests, testimonies, anything you'd like, comments, you can DM me, whatever it is. But most important for this platform here is to build the community. And I would love to hear some topics, maybe some topics you'd like me to cover. Right, if there are any topics you want me to cover, go ahead, write it down in the comment section, and I will definitely get into those too. Tomorrow, guys, is Q&A Thursday. Some questions have already come in, so if you have any other questions, please drop them in the comments below or DM me also. Would love to help out as much as I can, all right? So let's first get into a trial update. So those of you guys don't know, trial was on Monday and Tuesday, finishing up all the different witnesses that are coming out, including the alleged victims. So Monday's trial went for almost 7 hours. Like it went like deep into the evening because they have to get through like 20 plus different witnesses and such, and cross-examinations and stuff like that too. So all the witnesses will be done in those two. Well, they're already done by today. I will go over Tuesday's trial by tomorrow, okay? That's for the second day trial, but it's probably going to be the same, pretty much the same as the first one. There's not going to be any huge updates, mainly because it's a closed court. Especially for the two alleged victims, there's going to be closed court for them, so no one is able to go in there except for the lawyers and such. So that's why we're not going to know a lot of information that's coming out from that. But yes, witnesses on Monday came out, and our lawyers were also able to cross-examine all the witnesses there too. And yeah, from what I heard, there was our lawyers put in over 100 questions for cross-examination. So I think that's a great thing. It means that we're really, really prepared. And we also make sure you keep all of us, keep all the lawyers, the prosecution, the judge, keep all of them in your prayers. This is the last two before they'll be making a verdict before April 27th. And for those of you guys who don't know, April 27th is the last day of Sunsteam's detention. I believe it's 6 months. You cannot detain more than that long. So he'll have to be released. So what they are going to do is try to get the trial all done before that time. So let's see what happens there let's see what happens with the verdict. And of course, like I said, we're looking into being in trial all year because there's going to be an appeal, and then after the appeal, there's going to be the Supreme Court. And I just let's really, really pray for the entire situation. So that everything is done according to the will, right? And this is a really, really big time for all of us here. Our 21-day prayer condition has moved to a 40-day prayer condition, which means that our prayer condition goes all the way until April 30th now. So if you haven't got the announcement, our prayer condition for repentance is going to go all the way to April 30th, but part of that's going to be us part of it is us actually praying for the entire trial too. I know it's not the number one thing on our minds. We have a lot of things to do in our own lives, in our missions in church and stuff too. So I hope that this will be a prayer that we just keep deeply in our hearts, that we could pray for the trial and just pray for our lawyers to just do a spectacular job. And of course, let's ask for justice to be served. Also in the news after that first trial, it seems like the police are also referring some, the two alleged victims are foreigners. And then there's going to be, I think police are referring another alleged victim from Korea to the prosecution, and possibly two more after this trial. Not sure exactly how that's going to happen, but let's just pray for the situation so everything works out. And remember, guys, in the bleakest times is when we are to trust in God even more, right? So let's put everything up to God. Brainwashing, I will go into, we're going to go into chapter 3 for brainwashing too, but I do think this is a very, very interesting subject, right? And some of you, I've been reading some of the comments too on people's thoughts on this brainwashing. And the only reason I'm bringing up brainwashing, because that is the actual reason they're looking into right now in those 2 days of trial. Was there brainwashing? And that's the number one thing there. That's the issue of the trial right now, is brainwashing itself. And that's why I'm bringing it up. It's the reason why there are 2 days of witnesses being questioned. It is the alleged victim saying they were brainwashed, so they could not resist. So this is the whole reason why I'm bringing this up, this brainwashing concept and the science behind it. And, I do think there's this one comment that was made, and I thought was a fair comment, but I thought it was a very, very interesting comment. It was, and they said that brainwashing is not the issue. However, it is the issue when it comes to this trial, right? But they brought up another cool point, and the cool point was about distorted reality from what we believe, right? So we believe a certain way, and from that distorted reality, we do things against our conscience, but from that distorted reality, right? Because of what we believe in this history, right? And it changes the way we behave and the way that we think. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. That's an interesting point. But if you expand that out really, if you expand it out much, much wider, I think that would be a very slippery slope to challenge, because it has to do with religion, right? So if you think about every religion in the world, technically speaking, according to your religion, you will have a distorted reality, right? And it'll be very different from people who do not have faith in the world, right? And this is why one of the most important things you have to figure out in your country or from where you're from is there freedom of religion, right? Because that would be an absolute key factor in the country that you're dealing with. Because if there is freedom of religion, then you are able to believe anything you want in your religion, which is going to be a distorted reality, different from people without faith, right? Whether you believe that there are hundreds of gods or just one God. And if you even think about Christianity, yeah, from the non-faith point of view, it is distorted reality, even in Christianity, because you believe a man who is God died, then came back to life and flew into heaven. And then he's going to come back again. This is also a distorted reality. That's when you have a country that has freedom of religion, you are free to believe that, and your conscience, because you believe that, you're going to go. Your conscience is based on this, right? Based on the Bible itself, right? So that's why, for me, I was like, wow, that's a great topic to talk about, even though it doesn't really have to do with the trial itself, but it is a good topic. Right. And that's something that we can go into a little bit later on if people do want to discuss that. But I do want to get into chapter 3 of brainwashing. And we did talk about the first chapter was the origins, and the origins coming from the U.S. fight against communism. Right. So remember, this is not coming from religion. It comes from communism. Right. And then the propaganda given out by the CIA. And then the second chapter we went into was the actual, we actually tested it to see if there really is brainwashing, and we went through these brainwashing techniques that the CIA used as propaganda, and we were able to kind of wipe people's brains clean. However, we weren't able to put a new script on it, and which this MK Ultra project was the proof, and it happened twice over. The study was done twice over with hundreds of people, that you couldn't really brainwash doesn't work. Right? You can't put commands into someone's brain for them to do a certain thing. Right? So I thought that was quite interesting. And then we get into how did it flip into religion, like cults and such, where brainwashing techniques actually crossed over into the religious realm instead of communism. And we did talk about those 2 books that were written. And today I'm going to talk about, interesting is the fall of brainwashing theories in the late 20th century. Right? So this is a very, very interesting article. The article is in the description below, but one of the most tragic consequences of brainwashing theories applied to religious minorities, right, is that they were used to justify the illegal practice of deprogramming created by Ted Patrick in California and flourishing in the 70s. So those of you guys don't know deprogramming, they still do it in Korea and Japan, where they'll kidnap someone and try to deprogram them by kind of doing brainwashing techniques to get it out of their minds. Right? And it's illegal, right? So basically, if your sons or daughter's been brainwashed, parents felt justified in hiring deprogrammers who claimed to be able to kidnap the cultists, detain them, persuade them more or less violently to abandon the cults, right? So remember, this is an illegal practice in America. It still happens in Korea and Japan. Right? So in the same years, the academic study, the actual study of new religious movements or cults was born, right? This is the real study of it. Both in the US and the UK, the scholars who studied the movements criticized as cults found that conversions to them happen much in the same way as conversions to any other religion. Not a brainwashing, it's the exact same thing that happens to any other religion. And only a small percentage of those attending the courses and seminars of groups, let's say Unification Church, studied, and this was studied in depth by Eileen Barker, where allegedly miraculous techniques of brainwashing were used, joined the groups. So empirical evidence, let's take a look at real empirical evidence confirmed there was no brainwashing or mental manipulation, and these labels and theories were not less pseudoscientific than the ancient claims that heresies converted their followers through black magic. The scholars were successful in marginalizing the use of the word cult and the brainwashing theories in the academic community, but the controversy moved to the courts of law. Deprogramming had become a very lucrative profession and a cover for other illegal activities. Some law firm believed former members can sue new religious movements, claiming damages for brainwashing, and substantial financial interests had entered the field. Okay, so let's take a look at the very first case that led to the downfall of brainwashing in courts. It's called the Fishman case. All right. So it took a good decade for the majority scholarly opinion that brainwashing and mind control were pseudoscientific theories, which means it's not really real, right? And it took a couple decades for them to prevail in courts of law. So the decisive confrontation happened in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California in 1990 in the Fishman case. So this guy named Stephen Fishman, professional troublemaker, attended stockholders' meetings of large corporations for the purpose of suing the management with the support of other minority stockholders. He then signed settlements and pocketed the money paid by the corporations, leaving the other stockholders who had trusted him empty-handed. So in a lawsuit brought against him for fraud, Fishman claimed in his defense that at the time he was temporarily incapable of understanding or forming sound judgments because he was a member of Scientology since 1979. And as such, had been subjected to brainwashing. Scientology was not part of the suit and had nothing to do with Fishman's wrongdoings, right? So, having examined in detail the documents of the scholarly discussion about brainwashing, the judge at that time was S. Lowell Jensen. He went into all the documentation, the scholarly discussions about brainwashing, and he concluded that brainwashing and mind control did not represent meaningful scientific concepts, and while defended by a tiny minority of academics, had been rejected as pseudoscientific by an overwhelmingly majority of the scholars studying new religious movements. Singer's testimony was declared not admissible, and Fishman went to jail. So Fishman was actually this case. Fishman was the beginning of the end for the use of brainwashing anti-cult theories in American courts. And for anti-cultists, worse was to come in 1995 when a deprogrammer, Rick Ross, was involved in a civil trial after he had unsuccessfully tried to deprogram Jason Scott, a member of the United Pentecostal Church. Think about that. Pentecostal church, guys. A 5 million strong Christian denomination few would regard as a cult or a new religious movement, but Scott was supported by Scientology lawyers and detectives, which proved that his mother was referred to Ross by the Cult Awareness Network, which is CAN. And at that time, the largest American anti-cult movement, CAN, was sentenced to pay millions in damages and went bankrupted. CAN name and assets were purchased by a Scientology-related group, which allowed sociologist Anson D. Shoup and his team free access to CAN archives, and they concluded that the former CAN's practice of referring the parents of cult members to deprogrammers was not an occasional occurrence but happened regularly. And in turn, the deprogrammers kicked back to the old CAN hefty and probably illegal commissions, right? So after the Scott case, deprogramming became illegal in the US, and deprogrammers who continued their activities had to claim that they were now operating on a voluntary basis through interventions or exit counseling. So most democratic countries and the European Court of Human Rights also outlawed deprogramming. In Japan, deprogramming was not stopped by courts of law until the seminal decision of the Tokyo High Court in the case of Unification Church member Goto Toru in 2014, confirmed by the Supreme Court in 2015. So there you go. Japan no longer has deprogramming. And Human Rights Without Frontiers campaigned for years on behalf of Goto and played a crucial role in securing this decision. So what is the only country in the world where deprogramming continues to this day? This comes from the article, guys. South Korea. The only country where deprogramming continues, particularly against a Christian new religious movement like Shincheonji, notwithstanding massive street demonstrations in 2018 after a female member of that group was strangled to death by her father while she tried to escape the deprogrammers. But in general, deprogramming has been truly discredited, and the Fishman and Scott decisions have created a serious barrier against the use of deprogramming theories in U.S. court cases. So, that's kind of what's going on over there, right? So that is quite interesting, right? So we see that, we're talking about the entire world is against deprogramming except South Korea. And I do have some friends from my church in New York that they were telling me that they went through that whole thing for 3 months, trapped in an apartment and just watching things and were trying to be deprogrammed. It's the only place that happens is South Korea. Not even Japan has it, right? It's very archaic, right? And like I said, when it comes to the 20th century, brainwashing and all the scholarly evidence is against it, saying that it doesn't even exist, right? It's a very pseudo-scientific theory more than anything else. Either way. So that is the end of chapter 3. Hope it's something that you guys really enjoyed. I enjoyed it too. All right. So let's get into some music from some member artists from around the world. Today's feature artist of the day, none other than Rapture Collective from Australia. This is Julius and Sapphire with the song My ABCs. That's the brand new song that just came out 2 weeks ago. And then I haven't heard this song in a while. This is Andrew and Dina. They are a blessed couple over there in America. They are awesome. And they did a song together called Meet Me in the Middle. And then, of course, the uber talented Dr. Zinni, not only doing Health is Happiness, but this is her song, Dr. Zinni from Canada with Lord You.
Na, 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 na.
If you felt the love of God, let me hear you say A for Amen.
A for amen.
If you've been blessed in your life, I want to hear you say B for blessed.
B for blessed.
If you've been chosen out of love, let me hear you say C because I'm chosen.
C because I'm chosen.
Let's never forget it. The more we know Him, the more we come to love Him. So I just want to get to know Him like I know my ABCs. From Alpha to Omega, you've been there for me. For the beauty of the love that you give to me. For sending Christ down to earth just to rescue me. That's why I wanna know you like I know my ABCs. You raised me up, miniaturized ambition, masterpiece. You built me up, broken pieces till I found my peace. It's clear to me that you're the one and only one for me. That's why I wanna get to know you like I know my ABCs. Yeah.
C.
I just wanna get to know you like I know my ABCs. When I listen to your word, I hear my spirit sing. I can feel my soul lifted up on eagle's wings. My purpose and meaning, the reason I'm living is clear for me to see. I'm mesmerized, energized, let me testify.
When I see the sun shining, it feels like you're smiling. The summer rays of your love, I feel it burning in my heart. When I call on my G-O-D, I know he'll always be there for me. Cause he got me like 1, 2, 3. No more need to have fear in me. My Lord gave me that victory. Can't forget it like 3, 1, 6. Like a heavenly symphony. I'm gonna praise him like A-B-C.
From Alpha to Omega, you've been there for me. For the beauty of the love that you give to me. For sending Christ down to earth just to rescue me. That's why I wanna know you like I know my ABCs. I used to be ambivalent, a little bit indifferent to your will, yet you love me anyway. I know that truly made the difference. You made us in your image, yet we're so distant. Thank the Lord of my soul, he made a huge difference. Yeah.
Sing.
I just wanna get to know you like I know my ABCs.
A. B.
Yeah.
Sing.
God, please let me get to know you. I gotta know you like I know my
When I see the
ABCs.
sun is shining, it feels like you're smiling. The summer rays of your love.
The spiritual love of God, there's nothing quite like it. A love that does more than just moving your heart for a while. A love that renews the mind, heals the blind, and goes beyond time.
Turn the lights down low, 'cause we don't even have to go outside no more. Where the rain is pouring and it's thundering outside. When your love goes cold, even if you feel like you're all by yourself, I'm with you always. I'm not leaving by your side. Rain or shine, I don't mind, 'cause I will always find you. Sometimes I wanna hide, but you will always find me. So let's meet in the middle. So let's meet in the middle.
Yesterday is gone, look at what we made. There's still more to go, don't let your love fade. You're always in my heart, always within reach. Stormy skies are clearing, stormy hearts are calling. Keep going like you tell us, until the end you teach us. Change yourself and make yourself great every day. If you rise above your problems, then you'll change your fate. But I don't gotta worry, 'cause I'll never be late.
Rain or shine, I don't mind, 'cause I will always find you. Sometimes I wanna hide, but you will always find me. So let's meet in the middle. So let's meet in the middle. Rain or shine, I don't mind, 'cause I will always find you. Sometimes I wanna hide, but you will always find me. So let's meet in the middle. So let's meet in the middle.
Till the winter snow and rain. When the coldness hits your face. Ooh, when you're racing against the wind. Pray the storm will go away. Then you whisper your word. Your hands part the clouds. Your bright rays of hope break through the darkest shade. You light up the dark, set warmth to the cold, put an end to the rain, the sins you wash away. How the world swept up in pain. How the world's condemned by sin.
And that was Lord You. That is an original song by Dr. Zinni over there in Canada. Before that, Meet Me in the Middle, Andrew and Dina from America. And of course, everyone knows Andrew from the Sumney Boys. And of course, feature arts of the day, that's Rapture Collective. That is Julius Miumo with Sapphire with the song My ABCs. All right, so let's get into some news going on around the world. Yes, so much news going on in the last 24 hours. And I hope as brides of this history, knowing the power of our prayers, we really, really need to know what's going on so we can pray and repent for the world. So great news when it comes to Finland and NATO. Finland to join NATO on Tuesday, military alliance chief says. Finland to become the 31st member of the world's biggest military alliance, prompting a warning from Russia. Finland will become the 31st member of the world's biggest military alliance on Tuesday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says, prompting a warning from Russia that it would bolster its defenses in response. The former Norwegian Prime Minister said that on Tuesday afternoon that we will raise the Finnish flag for the first time here at the NATO headquarters. It will be a good day for Finland's security, for Nordic security, and for NATO as a whole. Stoltenberg said Turkey, the last NATO country to have ratified Finland's membership, will hand its official text to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Tuesday. Stoltenberg said he would then invite Finland to do the same. Finnish President Sauli Niinisto and Defense Minister Antti Kakkonen will attend the ceremony along with Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto. So big congratulations over there to Finland for joining NATO. This is news by the WHO. It's kind of a scary one, I think. It says that 1 in 6 people worldwide affected by infertility. It's no wonder that the world population is shrinking. A UN health agency calls for cheaper and more accessible treatments to help those trying to start a family. About 1 in 6 people around the world are affected by infertility during their lifetime, according to a new report from the WHO, which says more work needs to be done to improve access to affordable, high-quality fertility care. The UN's health agency says about 17.5% of the adult population experience infertility, with little variation in the prevalence of infertility between different parts of the world. Lifetime prevalence was 17.8% in high-income countries and 16.5% in low- and middle-income countries. Infertility is a disease of the male or female reproductive system, defined by the failure to achieve a pregnancy after 12 months or more of trying. And for those affected, it can cause significant distress, stigma, and financial hardship, affecting their mental and psychosocial well-being, the WHO said. And for those of you guys who don't know, when it comes to the medical care profession for infertility, there's like different ways you can go about it, including assisted reproductive technology like in vitro or IVF. But it remains underfunded, and accessibility is very, very high in cost, right? So, most of the fertility treatments are often funded out of pocket. Last but not least, we'll go over to Malaysia, where I'm at right now. And I didn't know about this, but Malaysia has now officially ended a mandatory death penalty for serious crimes. So Malaysia's parliament has voted to remove the country's mandatory death penalty, potentially sparing more than 1,300 prisoners on death row, right? So I didn't know there was a mandatory one, but the country has had a moratorium on execution since 2018. But lawmakers on Monday overwhelmingly voted to remove the death penalty as the mandatory sentence for 11 serious crimes, including murder and terrorism. Judges will retain discretion to impose capital punishment in exceptional cases, but for the most serious crimes, the courts will now hand down life imprisonment sentences of 40 years, or corporal punishment such as caning, lawmakers said. The reforms still need to clear the country's upper house, but are widely expected to pass. There are 34 criminal offenses punishable by death in Malaysia, 11 of which before Monday carried the mandatory death penalty. The new laws, once enacted, will apply retrospectively, allowing those on death row 90 days to seek a review of their sentences. So that is great news. I do think so. Like Sunsteam talked about this a while back, that, capital punishment, someone's life is not up to a human being. It is up to God, right? So that is good news for Malaysia right there. All right. So there's top 3 news going on around the world. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. Let's move into some sporting news. And the biggest news is not even it's not like sporting news. It's business news. So everyone knows who the UFC is, right? And everyone knows who WWE, the wrestling that people go watch and such. They have merged into one company. And now this company is worth $21 billion as an entertainment company. It unites two of the biggest names in wrestling and entertainment and caps a months-long sale process for WWE. WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment, and UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, have announced they will merge to create a $21.4 billion sports entertainment giant. A new publicly traded company will house UFC and WWE brands, with Endeavor Group Holdings taking a 51% controlling interest in the new company. The deal unites two of the biggest names in wrestling and entertainment and caps a months-long process. So that is pretty huge news in the entertainment industry, UFC and WWE coming together. March Madness. The NCAA men's basketball title is officially done, and who is the new winner? It is UConn. University of Connecticut, the Huskies, earned their 5th title with a dominant victory over San Diego State University. It wasn't even close. It was like 76-59, and they are now, that's their 5th championship. They're 5 for 5. And it was Adama Sanogo who won the most outstanding player honors, finishing with 17 points and 10 rebounds in the final. So big congratulations to the Huskies that ended the year 31-8 and became the 5th team since the bracket expanded in 1985 to win all 6 NCAA tournament games by double digits on the way to a championship. So big congrats to UConn for winning the national championship. NBA news. In NBA news, it looks like Golden State Warriors' Andrew Wiggins is expected, the Canadian Andrew Wiggins, expected back this week. He's missed 22 consecutive games attending to a family matter and is expected to be back in the Bay Area as soon as the next 24 hours. So that's great news for the Golden State Warriors. And in the West, yeah, it is a crazy, crazy playoff run right now. Only like 3 games left, 2 or 3 games left. 4 teams with the same amount of losses, from the 5th seed to the 8th seed, and they all have the same amount of losses, which is kind of crazy. 7 and 8 are play-in seeds, and 5 and 6 are guaranteed playoff spots. And people do want 5 or 6, right? They don't have to go through any play-in, like a one-and-done game, right? Lakers sit in 7th at the moment, but could be in 5th if everything turns out. So that's kind of crazy how 4 teams are the same from the 5th seed to the 8th seed. Either way. There it is, guys. That's the top 3 news in sports and news from around the world. Hope it's something that helps you guys out when it comes to praying for this world too, or just needing a break, if anything else, all right? So, well, if the news is done, you know what that means. It is the golden time. And yes, it is the golden time, a time of praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. Hope all of you guys are looking forward to giving glory to God and the Holy Spirit. So, what are we going to praise and worship today? We're going to start off with Today as I Follow the Lord, and then Victory, and we'll break things down with The Lord is My Strength. So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
Victory has been achieved, this history has won, since we've received our Lord. We're sharing love and joy, this history is growing with time, more as the days pass by. This is the history of hope, providence history. Now that the rapture's fulfilled, we have fulfilled heaven's will. No greater glory exists, yesterday, now, and evermore. This history is shining so bright, more as the days pass by. Those who have not realized fade in the distant night. Victory has been achieved, this history has won, since we've received our Lord. We're sharing love and joy, this history is growing with time, more as the days pass by. This is the history of hope, providence history. rapture's fulfilled. We have fulfilled heaven's will. No greater glory exists. Yesterday, now, and evermore. This history is shining so bright. More as the days pass by. Those who have not realized fade in the distant night. Victory has been achieved.
My Lord, I think only of you. Oh, my bridegroom, you're living by my side. I will serve you with each and every thought, and throughout my life I'll love you, Lord. My Lord, I think only of you. Oh, my bridegroom, you're running next to me. I will raise your sail, and with the strength you give, I will surely spread this history. My Lord, I will witness for you. You have triumphed and made God's dreams come true. So forevermore, you will be glorified. You fulfill the will for all mankind. Oh Lord, you are my strength, my everything. I will never forget you're living with me. I will remember your life of love, and I will not forget you, my Lord. Oh Lord, you're the source of my strength, and forever my one and only love. When I think of you, my heart is set ablaze. So today again I'll testify. Oh Lord, you're the source of my strength, and forever my one and only love. When I think of you, my heart is set ablaze. So today again I'll testify. When I think of you, my heart is set ablaze. So today again I'll testify. So today again I'll testify.
And what an oldie but a goodie that is. The Lord is my strength. Before that, victory. And of course, today as I follow the Lord. I hope you guys really enjoyed that time of praise and worship. And hope it's something that all of us will prepare our hearts each and every day. Praise is something we got to do all the time, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed that. So let's get into today's word study. And we're going to get into the book of Joshua. All right, so Joshua in Hebrew, his name actually is Yeshua, which is exactly the same as Jesus, right? So we know about Joshua. He was the assistant of Moses. He's mentioned in the book of Exodus and Numbers. And before the Exodus, actually, it was Joshua who was born in Egypt, and this is according to the Bible, and he's also known as one of the spies sent to Canaan by Moses. So Joshua was the leader of the Israel tribes. After the death of Moses, Joshua and Caleb conquered the promised land of Canaan and divided the land into the 12 tribes of Israel, and he was known to die at the age of about 110. Right? He lived in the Bronze Age according to biblical chronology, and Joshua had faith in God, and that's why he was chosen by God to lead the Israelites. A couple of interesting things about Joshua. His original name was Hosea, right? And he's from the tribe of Ephraim, right? And he was the son of Nun, N-U-N, right? And he was faithful to Moses and God, and he commanded the militia group for their first battle and was chosen by Moses. And in Rephidim, after exiting Egypt, they fought against the Amalekites. And when Moses ascended Mount Sinai to communicate with God, he is known to have gone up there with him. And at Mount Sinai, Moses received the 10 Commandments from God. And when Moses came back from Mount Sinai, the Israelites were dancing around the golden calf, and Joshua is said to have broken the tablets. The tablets contained the 10 Commandments, and when Moses was conversing with God inside the tent, Joshua was guarding it. He later did not accompany Moses when he was called to Mount Sinai for a second time. So Joshua and Caleb, they were sent by Moses to explore the land of Canaan as one of the 12 spies, right? And only Caleb and Joshua brought back positive reports, and we know this story too. So that's why these were the only of the 12, those two were the only ones to have entered the promised land as a reward. Joshua was there to conquer Canaan, the land assigned to Abraham in the Battle of Jericho, and Christ is called the better and more faithful version of Joshua, right? So even when you look in Christianity, they do compare the two of Joshua and Jesus, right? Joshua is said to have similarities with Jesus. Jesus said to be the better version of Joshua. Both Joshua and Jesus led people to a safe place. As Jesus led many people to God's rest, similarly, Joshua and Caleb led people to Canaan. He was considered to be a type of Jesus Christ by many early pastors. And in the European Orthodox Church, there is a story of Joshua and Canaanite kings. And Joshua was 59 years old when Moses died. And that is 51 years after he arrived in Canaan. He was 19 at the time of the Exodus, right? Very, very courageous, showed humbleness towards his people. And it's the 6th book in the Christian Old Testament, and Hebrew Bible is the book of Joshua, right? And it contains the stories of Israel from the conquest of Canaan to the Babylonian exile. And the main theological theme of the book of Joshua and of Deuteronomist history is about faith in God, right? So how many battles did Joshua actually fight? Well, he fought about 13 battles and 31 tribes, right? So, but we do know that there's stories where many tribes came together to battle against him. That's why it wasn't 31 battles. He had 13 battles on behalf of Israel. He was born in Egypt, a slave in Egypt before, and it took 40 years for Joshua to conquer the Promised Land. And the Israelites had an alliance with the 5 kings of the Amorites, and they were the kings of Hebron, Jarmuth. And we know this story when it comes to the Sunstop too, right? So it's like the 5 kings were Hebron, Jarmuth, Eglon, Lachish, and Jerusalem. And the Bible's Old Testament has recorded 8 to 9 battles, and Joshua led Israel to the Promised Land. So that's kind of like the basic stories of Joshua here. And we know that as a central figure, one of the things known for Joshua is he is known for bravery and courage, right? So let's take a look at this as a historical book, right? So the Hebrew Bible comprises of 3 sections: the Torah, the Pentateuch, and the prophetic books, right? And both the former and the latter, so the Torah and the prophetic books, And the writings include everything else in the Hebrew canon. And the Christian Old Testament has traditionally been arranged along different lines. So after the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books written by Moses, comes a series of books that continue in roughly chronological order the history of Israel. So the book of Joshua depicts Israel taking possession of the land of Canaan, and Judges collect stories about the leaders of early Israel in the 200 years before the emergence of the monarchy, or where King Saul comes in, right? After the tale of Ruth, a sort of interlude in the narrative sweep, an interlude in the narrative sweep of these books, 1st and 2nd Samuel tell of the rise and fall of Saul, Israel's first king, and the succession of King David. The books of Kings take us from the death of David and the enthronement of Solomon through the division of the people into the 2 kingdoms of Israel and Judah to the destruction of the northern kingdom, Israel, at the hands of Assyrian invaders, and that's in 722, where there's the diaspora happens at that time, and then to the fall of Judah, the southern kingdom, to the Babylonians in 587 BC, and its ensuing exile, the Babylonian captivity. Except for Ruth, these writings bear the marks of a specific theological outlook, that of the book of Deuteronomy, and together with that book as its introductory volume constitute what is called the Deuteronomistic history. Deuteronomistic history. So in this theology, what has characterized Israel's history in the 600 years from Moses to the Babylonian exile has been a dynamic of fidelity or infidelity to Israel's covenant with God, and the consequent destiny Israel forges for itself of covenant blessing or covenant curse. So this dynamic of choice and consequence serves to explain the disasters Israel incurs throughout its history, from the so-called conquest and the days of the judges to the fall of the north, right? And in its pre-exilic edition, the Deuteronomistic history would have stood also as warning and wake-up calls to the surviving southern kingdom. So the books of Chronicles recycle much of the material found in the previous works, but the author, the chronicler, treats it selectively with the characteristic theological point of view. So its focus is the Jerusalem temple and its cultic arrangements, which by way of legitimation are attributed to David, the ideal king, right? So the chronicler's interests carry through the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, which recount the restoration of Jewish worship and life in the period of Persian rule following release from exile in Babylon, right? So the books of the Maccabees give us 2 overlapping but somewhat differing accounts of Jewish resistance to the Seleucid persecution in the early 2nd century. And I talk about that when it comes to the 400 years between Malachi and Jesus, right? And there's a lot of this history that comes out after that we'll probably get into it in another section, but it's considered more historical for the book of Joshua, right? And it's something I hope that a lot of us will be able to read again, because the book of Joshua, there's kind of a narrative of the way Israel took possession of the land of Canaan, making it the land of Israel, right? And this process is very swift and inexorable, and is followed by an orderly division and disposition of the land among the 12 tribes, with the concluding ceremony of covenant renewal, right? So the theological message of the book is unmistakable. God has been faithful to the promise of the land. And this is a great thing for all of us with the recent messages too. God has been faithful to the promise, right? And if Israel relies totally on the Lord for victory, if Israel is united as a people, if the law, right, is kept and no one grows rich from victory in war, then and only then will Israel possess the land, right? And I think that's what we're waiting for 2023 also, and that's why this scripture is such a big one for all of us here to understand the situation that we're in right now. So I hope that we understand how important this story of Joshua is. It's something that I do think that a lot of us can learn from and understand that we are in a very, very similar situation too. Okay, so there it is, guys. That is the book of Joshua. I hope it's something that you guys really enjoy, and it'll be something that you can, it'll jumpstart you to read the book of Joshua also. So let's get into today's song of choice, and we're gonna go back to Elevation Worship. And great song here. I love it. It's a very poetic song, so I hope you guys will enjoy this. This song is called Graves into Gardens.
searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Melts empty praise and treasures of fame are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together, and every
And what a great song that is. Elevation Worship with Graves into Gardens. Hope you guys really enjoyed that, and just, it's good just to hear music praising God, and I hope it's something that we can do in our everyday life. All right, so let's move into the last segment for today. And of course, every single Wednesday, we have Health is Happiness. Just an amazing job by all these doctors. You know, we have Dr. Zinni, we have Dr. Abe, and of course, we have Dr. Giovanni, also from Australia, who'll be speaking today on celiac disease. I have no idea what that is, but I'm going to learn about it right now. Everyone, and I hope that you guys are learning a lot from this. If you have any questions, there is an email below that you can email your questions about. This is Health is Happiness, talking about celiac disease with Dr. Giovanni.
Hello, my name is Dr. Giovanni and I'm back with another medical segment today. I'm a third-year doctor currently training in Melbourne, Australia, and today I wanted to talk to you about a very common condition known as celiac disease. As a reminder, everything we discuss today is not medical advice and should not be taken as such, but rather general medical information. So like we mentioned, we're going to talk about celiac disease. You might be thinking, what is celiac disease? Well, it's a very common autoimmune disorder. So autoimmune meaning it's your own immune system attacking your body, and it affects the small bowel, so the small intestine. And it usually occurs in response to gluten, which is a protein on many food grains that we eat. And so it causes gut inflammation, gut changes, and as a result, you can get malabsorption of nutrients, fatigue, weight loss. It has a major impact on people's lives because to control the condition, they can't eat gluten, which really limits their diet, especially in the modern Western diet, and also impacts their quality of life because of making those dietary changes and the social consequences of making those dietary changes. Who gets celiac disease? Like I said, it's really common. The global population prevalence is about 1%, meaning 1 in every 100 people on Earth, approximately speaking, will have celiac disease at any point in time. And it tends to occur in populations where people are genetically predisposed and then upon that foundation have the environmental exposure to gluten-containing foods. And it's common in people with autoimmune conditions. You might think of type 1 diabetes or Graves' disease, an autoimmune thyroid condition. People with those conditions or a family history of those conditions, we often see that they're at higher risk of developing celiac disease too. Now, what causes celiac disease? Like we said, there's the genetic component and then the environmental component where you're exposed to gluten. If we think a bit more about the anatomy and physiology of it all, the human gastrointestinal tract is primarily important for your digestion of food. And so you swallow your food, goes down the esophagus, into the stomach, acids and enzymes start to break down the food, and then it gets down to the small bowel or the small intestine, where your body will start to absorb important nutrients. It's in that small intestine where there's grooves that give the characteristic anatomy or features of the small intestine. And in someone with celiac disease, all that inflammation and all that damage from the immune system causes changes to those grooves. And as a result, absorption is not so good. And then they start to get swelling and all the symptoms and the abdominal discomfort and the diarrhea because of all that inflammation and all those changes happening in the small bowel. And this happens once there's exposure to gluten-containing foods. So people often not have any symptoms if they don't have gluten-containing foods, but that's not always the case. And what are the clinical features or the symptoms of celiac disease? So we think about this in two categories broadly: the symptoms and signs that affect the gastrointestinal tract and those that are extra gastrointestinal, that is, that affect the body outside of the gastrointestinal tract. And so in the first category, we think of things like chronic or recurrent diarrhea, constipation, steatorrhea, which is our way of saying fatty diarrhea, which is as bad as you can imagine, malabsorption, unintentional weight loss, abdominal pain, abdominal bloating or distension. And these symptoms can be quite similar to irritable bowel syndrome, if you have heard of that or know somebody with that, or otherwise even refractory or severe lactose intolerance can be quite similar too. In terms of the extra gastrointestinal features, we think of things like the nutrient deficiencies like iron, folate, vitamin B12, and that can cause people to become anemic, which is where they have a low hemoglobin level and they get tired very easily. They can have deranged blood test markers for their liver. They can get a rash that's classically known as dermatitis herpetiformis. They can get fatigue, recurrent headaches, reduced fertility. They can even get mouth ulcers known as aphthous stomatitis. They can have weakened bones and premature osteoporosis. And they can even get damage and burning of nerves in the hands and feet called peripheral neuropathy. So there's quite a number of different signs and symptoms that go along with celiac disease. Now, how do we diagnose celiac disease? The important thing to consider when you're trying to make a diagnosis of celiac disease is that the tests that we use to diagnose it are more effective and more reliable if the patient is on a gluten-containing diet. Because if they go off their gluten-containing diet, many of their symptoms and signs start to resolve, and then the tests can give us a false negative. So we do these tests when someone is on a gluten diet, not off it. And the tests that we do are blood tests, firstly. There's mainly the tests that we would use are tests for antibodies that are part of the autoimmune response. And so we would look at TTG IgA, which is tissue transglutaminase IgA antibody, which is overall the preferred blood test to use as a first test. And then there's a second antibody that we look at, which is an antibody targeting the gliadin part of the gluten, and that's called DGP IgG, deamidated gliadin peptide IgG protein, which is a second helpful blood test. The definitive test, or the most ideal and reliable test that we can do, is something called endoscopy with a small bowel biopsy. And that's our gold standard test to diagnose celiac disease. The way that works is that you'll have to go to a theatre or a surgical centre where an anaesthetist will sedate you, and then a gastroenterologist will put a long cord with a camera down in your mouth, down the esophagus, down the stomach, and then into the small intestine. And there they'll have a look, and they'll look for the classical changes of the gut that they can identify, and then they'll take some biopsies, which are some small samples, send those to the lab, and then the lab will have a look at them under the microscope, and they'll try and confirm what they're seeing under the microscope if it does look like the changes that are characteristic of celiac disease, and make a diagnosis there. Now, what are some of the potential complications that occur with celiac disease? And mind you, some of these complications may take months to years, to even decades to occur, but they're still important to be aware of. So in the shorter term, some common things include weight loss, lethargy, and just generally failure to thrive, not growing as well as you should, not reaching your full height and weight as you ought to. And then we mentioned before a lot about nutritional deficiencies that occur from the malabsorption. And this is really important, like we said, that you can develop anemia. You can have, from the low vitamin D, low calcium absorption, weakened bones like osteoporosis. One of the rarer but most concerning complications is the increased risk of certain cancers. So there's an increased risk of lymphoma as well as gastrointestinal tract cancer itself. And so for this reason, increased monitoring of people with celiac disease is often something that needs to be arranged from the point of view of these cancers. Now, how do we manage celiac disease? So it's like most conditions in medicine today, we say it's multimodal, meaning there's many modes or methods that we want to apply to optimize the treatment of the person to help with their symptoms. There's an easy mnemonic that you can use to help, which is the word celiac itself. If you start with CO of celiac, then you get consultation with a dietitian, CO for consultation. And so a big part of managing their disease is having a dietitian on board who can provide counselling and advice to completely remove gluten-containing foods from the diet, and to help make sure that their diet is nutritious and able to cover for any deficiencies that they are at risk of having or may already have. And so the principal dietary things that they would need to avoid include foods made of wheat, rye and barley. They all need to be avoided completely. Oats can be tried with caution. Sometimes people get away with that fine. Rice, corn, buckwheat, potatoes, they're all safe. And certain other things people may need to experiment with specifically. But getting a dietitian on board as soon as possible is one of the most important things you can do. The E in celiac is for education about celiac disease, so that more people know about the condition, the more empowered they are to make the right decisions, look after themselves, and be aware of any issues that may come up along the way. L is for lifelong, because this adherence to a gluten-free diet is not temporary, it's a lifelong measure. Until we have any better treatments, this is the mainstay of therapy, which means for lifelong. they need to be off a gluten diet. The I in celiac is for identification, and that's for identification of nutritional deficiencies and then treatment of those if they're identified. And so sometimes there are overt symptoms. People may feel really tired, and you can do a blood test and see that they're anemic, they're low in iron. Sometimes people don't have symptoms, so you still want to get blood tests done to see if you are deficient in any nutrients. Other common nutritional deficiencies include vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin B12, copper, zinc, folic acid, ferritin, vitamin K. There's quite a number of things. And if you note, the vitamin A, D, and E are all your fat-soluble vitamins, and there can be sometimes poorer fat absorption in people with celiac disease, and that's why you can tend to lose those vitamins easily. A in celiac disease is for access to advocacy groups. And like we mentioned at the beginning, there's quite significant psychological and social stress associated with celiac disease, because not only do you have to change your diet in a really significant way, it also means you can't eat the foods that you want to eat with other people. You can't eat at other restaurants potentially, or places that you would want to eat at. And this affects your social life, and this just generally makes socializing, which we often do through eating, more difficult than it might otherwise be. And so it's always good to have a social support or an advocacy group connected to people with celiac disease to help them. And the last C is for continuous long-term follow-up, and usually with a multidisciplinary team, because it's a lifelong condition, and so follow-up has to be continuous. Things don't just stop when we decide that we've lost interest in the condition. It's continuous. So these are the main points that I think we should know about celiac disease. And if you've got any questions or thoughts, always feel free to let us know. Thanks, guys. That's all from me, Dr. Giovanni, today. Cheers.
And thank you so much, Dr. Giovanni, over there in Australia with another wonderful episode of Health is Happiness on celiac disease. And I don't know the name celiac, but everything he's talking about, like gut and all these gut problems, I think a lot of people understand what he is talking about. And, we hear this word all the time, gluten, gluten, gluten. And it's something that we do need to take into consideration in all the different things that we eat, right? And I think one of the biggest things that we're probably going to understand is it's about what we eat that plays such a huge role in our health. I am so thankful to all the doctors out there who are helping out with Health is Happiness. You guys are so awesome and amazing. I hope you guys will continue to be blessed in your practices, and that we too, this is a blessing, guys. We're not going to be able to get this much. I'm not sure the right words to say this, but it's like they're giving their free time for us. So guys, ask your questions and see what's going on. And I really, really hope that you guys will really be able to, benefit from this wonderful segment on Health is Happiness. All right. So there it is, guys. That is the end of today's Wednesday podcast. Hope you guys have an amazing and awesome day. It is Wednesday. We're going to have a service tonight. Please pray for your leaders, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star Drive, I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, I'm on the Morning Star